Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Here today on the program at Stillman and Co. On YouTube, again, like and subscribe. And again, if you've got old pawpaws who don't totally know how to find this show, whether it's the podcast form or the YouTube form, show them. I had a friend of mine that I went to high school with. Her dad, I ran into at the Predators game yesterday. Great guy. Love him. Have known him pretty much my entire life. He was a huge supporter of mine going all the way back to high school. He was a huge Stillman and Company fan. Huge. And I ran into him at the Preds game last night. And he said to me, he's like, I miss you. He's like, where can I find you? He's like, I don't listen to the radio station anymore. I got to have you. I said, easy. I said, I got a podcast now. It's kind of the way things are going. And he's like, I don't necessarily do podcasts. I go, you got YouTube? He said, yeah. He pulls out his phone, pulls up YouTube. And I hit right there, subscribe. If you've got to do that for the old pawpaws in your life to get the Stillman and Company program, do it. Like and subscribe today. You people know the drill. One person, Chris, says, can't wait to hear how bad Cam sucks today. That is actually not going to be the topic du jour. Today, we are going to start with the college football playoff rankings. I am not surprised by any stretch of the imagination what happened to Vanderbilt yesterday as far as the college football playoff rankings are concerned. Vanderbilt stays at number 14. They went on the road. They beat Tennessee, and they stay number 14. And not only did they beat Tennessee, they beat the shit out of Tennessee. And they stay number 14. Whether that is fair, unfair, you tell me. I don't know. But it is what it is. And the reality as far as Vanderbilt is concerned is that Vanderbilt is not going to make the college football playoff. It is what it is. Now, you said, can't wait to hear about how bad Cam sucks. And I got to tell you, I think that today's show would have more viewers if it was another discussion about how I don't think Cam Ward's very good. Certainly don't think he's going to be the elite level quarterback that's going to transcend the Titans. But I'm not doing that today because there are plenty of other days for that. I am doing this today because this is what I think is right. And this is the deal when it comes to the Stillman and Company program, because even though it is distributed by 440 Sports and Braden is a great partner and boss on this program, and our video, we haven't really publicly said this, but our video is distributed by Believe, the Believe Network and everything else. While that's great, I own it. This is my show. And so today's show may not have the amount of viewers because Vanderbilt does not attract the core Stillman and Company audience the way that the Tennessee Titans and Cam Ward Talk attracts the core Stillman and Company program. But because it's my show, I decide what we talk about, and I decide what matters, and I decide what, hey, this is what I think I've got to get off my chest today. That's why I love doing the show. And I feel for Vanderbilt. And I feel for what happened to Vanderbilt. But I think we need to talk about the reality of the college football playoff. Because with the college football playoff rankings that came out yesterday, there is nothing that Vanderbilt can do. There is nothing that anybody else can or cannot do that would put Vanderbilt into the college football playoff. It's over. Congratulations to Vanderbilt. Their best season in school history. They won 10 games in the SEC. They beat LSU. They beat Missouri. They beat South Carolina, who was ranked number 10 in the country when they beat them. They beat Tennessee at Tennessee by 3 touchdowns. Nobody knew that Virginia Tech was this shitty of a team when Vandy went and played them. And Vanderbilt absolutely kicked their ass. Also, I think I might have screwed up the YouTube chat. That might just be me. I put in this Rick Neuheisel clip into the thing, and I think it might have screwed it up. If I did, I'm sorry. Regardless, when it comes to Vanderbilt, they have arguably the best player in America as their starting quarterback. And yet, there is no combination of wins or losses this weekend that can propel Vanderbilt into the college football playoff. It is what it is. In fact, the committee told you that when they passed Vanderbilt by putting Texas, who did beat Vandy by 3 points, in front of Vandy. And Texas has a bad loss on their resume and 3 losses to Vanderbilt's 2. And the one guiding principle for the decade-long process of the college football playoff is it has traditionally always been about how many games you lose, not really how many games you win. But 3-loss Texas, who won by a field goal at home, is ahead of Vanderbilt, who has 2 losses. I hate it for Clark Lea. I hate it for Diego Pavia. I hate it for college football. Because this Vanderbilt team is one of the 12 best teams in the country, period. I have watched enough college football this year to tell you that they are one of the 12 best teams. It would not surprise me if Vanderbilt played A&M and beat them. It would not surprise me if Vanderbilt played Georgia and beat them. But it doesn't matter because they're not getting in. Last season, Ohio State lost 2 games, one to a very good Oregon team on the road and one to a bad Michigan team at home. And they won the national title. Vanderbilt has 2 losses this year, both to top 13 teams, according to the committee, top 13 teams, and both were on the road. Neither were blowouts. Neither were games that after the Alabama-Vanderbilt game, I walked away and said, no way Vanderbilt could ever compete with Alabama. I thought Vanderbilt was right there with Bama. They lost by 3 to Texas. It was, and I don't want to sound like Rand Carthon here, but it was a bounce of the ball on the onside kick that might have made the difference. And I am a fan of an ACC school, unlike a lot of people out there. So I've watched ACC football, and I've watched Miami this season. And I would take Vanderbilt to beat Miami. I would take Vanderbilt to go on the road and beat Miami in Miami. I would take them to beat Miami in Nashville. Hell, I'd take them to beat Miami in Beirut if that's where they decided to play the game. But this is the issue with the 12-team college football playoff essentially being decided by politicians. It is subjective, and they're going to justify what they want to do with whatever cockamamie excuse they find, regardless of how intellectually dishonest it may be. They have the head of the committee up there yesterday, and he's talking about, well, you know, Vanderbilt doesn't have a ranked win because even though Tennessee was 19th in the poll, they went into Knoxville, beat them by 3 touchdowns, so now Tennessee's out of the poll. By the way, this same committee said Oregon gets credit for when they beat Penn State, even though Penn State stinks. Seriously. Notre Dame is 10th. Why is Notre Dame 10th? Well, one argument could be that they don't have a bad loss, but Vanderbilt doesn't have a bad loss. Notre Dame has one meaningful win. They beat USC by 10 points. You don't think Vanderbilt could beat USC by 10 points? Vanderbilt just beat Tennessee by 21. But the committee, again, decided Tennessee's not good anymore. Why did the committee decide that Tennessee's not good anymore? Because Vanderbilt beat them. And the committee needed a justification to lift Notre Dame up, hence why USC is at 16 and Vanderbilt down, which is why Tennessee is unranked. Notre Dame is always going to get the benefit of the doubt. Why? Because they are Notre Dame. That's why. Miami beat Notre Dame and is behind Notre Dame. And that's the truth about college football and the college football playoff. This is the unfortunate reality. The college football playoff is a television show. It is not a true competition. Sure, there is a competition element to the college football playoff, but there's also a competition element to the Price is Right. But they don't put people on the Price is Right who have extensively studied consumer prices or inflation, because that would be boring. Instead, they put fat people on who jump up and down at the idea of winning a Kia Rio, and they want to shout their Mima out, who is undoubtedly watching back at home. That's what the college football playoff is. It's a TV show. College football went through an era where they wanted to be as objective as possible. It was called the BCS. We didn't want the writers deciding who the national champion was anymore. Let's have the computers decide. The problem was, after the 2003 USC Trojans got left out of the national championship, we as a society decided that the computers can't get it right. We need the human element. And with the human element comes subjectivity and also, dare I say, corruption. Why? Because at the end of the day, somebody has to foot the bill for all of this. Somebody has to write the check. And whoever foots the bill is going to get their way. In 2025, isn't it obvious in college football, TV foots the bill? So TV decides what happens. Ohio State has to play every game at noon because of TV. The SEC has Texas in it, even with the stark disagreement from A&M to let them in the conference, because TV wanted Texas in the SEC. The Rose Bowl no longer exists in its traditional form. The Pac-12 does not exist in any real form. And the Big Ten is desperate for third and fourth place games so they can sell them to the networks. Why? Because of the money. Now, this is not some Tucker Carlson level conspiracy that is going to try to convince you that evil people are doing evil things to the great American sport that you love because they want to ruin you and they want to ruin your way of life. No. This is just the reality that the College Football Playoff Committee thinks more people want to watch Notre Dame and more people want to watch Miami than people want to watch Vanderbilt or BYU. And in order to make the playoff, you have to play your way in. You want to be guaranteed a spot? You have to play your way in to the college football playoff. It's as simple as that. And Vanderbilt did not play their way into the college football playoff. They had the option to play their way in by winning every game and winning the SEC. Unfortunately, they lost twice to two good teams on the road. Well, the committee decides that's enough. No interest there. Not worried. If we relied on computers to be the ones who decide who gets into the playoff and who doesn't, the BCS model says Vanderbilt right now is the 12th best team in the country. With BYU sitting at 11 and set to play on Saturday, Vanderbilt would have a legitimate shot at making the playoff. Sorry to number 13 Miami and number 14 Texas, you're out. But we don't rely on the computers. We rely on sitting and former athletic directors and a hodgepodge of football people who I truly doubt watched Vanderbilt absolutely cream Virginia Tech in week 2 with the best second half I have ever seen. Miami smoked Virginia Tech too. They went up in the poll. Vanderbilt smoked Virginia Tech. Nobody watched it. It's as simple as that. And I've always said, no matter how many teams we have in the college football playoff, whoever gets left out is going to be upset. That's just how it works in college football. I hate it, but it is the truth. If we have 16 teams, then team number 17 will have a gripe. And the college football playoff does allow you to automatically qualify, and Vanderbilt did not. But I got a document from Vanderbilt the other day, as did many people in the media, and it was the fact sheet of why Vanderbilt belongs in the 12-team field. It was about numbers. It was about statistics. It was about facts. The committee doesn't care. It's subjective. It's who do we think's better, Notre Dame or Vanderbilt? When Vanderbilt played Alabama, I was hosting Mad Dog Radio that morning, and I kept looking at the TV screen on College Game Day, and I saw the Vanderbilt helmet sitting next to the Alabama helmet. And I said, those helmets just don't belong together. And I know Vandy beat Bama the year before, and I know Vandy's good, and I know Alabama's not Nick Saban's Alabama anymore, but I just don't see those helmets and think they belong. Because that's 36 years of college football experience saying Vandy and Bama don't belong together. And then they played the game. Vanderbilt on the road, 2:30 ABC in Tuscaloosa, all the bells and whistles. And I walked away from that game thinking Vanderbilt squandered a royal opportunity, thinking that Vanderbilt truly was the better team. Diego Pavia fumbled the ball. Diego Pavia threw an interception in the fourth quarter, and Bama was off to the races. And maybe they're not better than Bama. Again, they did play. But the committee is telling us that Notre Dame is better than Miami, and they did play too. 2 weeks later, I saw the Vanderbilt helmet, and I saw the LSU helmet, and I had the same feeling that I had for the Alabama-Vanderbilt game, in which I said those two helmets do not belong in the same stratosphere. My entire life, that Vanderbilt helmet has only belonged at the end of the rest of the SEC, alphabetically with the V, and it was like, yeah, we have to include Vanderbilt, but I mean, they're coached by Robbie Caldwell. What are we talking about? But that's not this Vanderbilt team because they played LSU, and they beat the shit out of them. So, again, the facts say Vanderbilt is not the 14th best team in the country. The way that we traditionally grade college football teams does not say Vanderbilt is the 14th best team in the country. The old computer model that we used to use does not say that Vanderbilt is the 14th best team in the country. But the subjective decision makers sitting in the boardroom say Vanderbilt's 14th. So let's not try to make arguments or excuses about why Vanderbilt got completely left in the dust, even after winning by 3 touchdowns in a place that Georgia needed a miracle and overtime in order to survive. Because at the end of the day, it's a waste of our breaths. Let's just admit what it is. The college football playoff is a popularity contest. That's what it is. It is not a true competition. Just listen to Coach Rick Neuheisel. This was yesterday on SiriusXM College Sports Radio. I was a guest on the Full Ride Show. I was making a case for Vanderbilt. I was a guest on the Full Ride Show. And here's what Coach Rick Neuheisel, who is not an SEC guy, played at UCLA, coached at UCLA, he's Pac-12 coach. Now he's a Big Ten guy, works for CBS, doesn't have the SEC rights. Here's what Coach Rick Neuheisel said yesterday.
I would say it this way. If Vanderbilt were wearing Tennessee orange,
yes,
and had this record, they'd be in the playoffs. If Vanderbilt were wearing Texas orange and had this record, yeah, they would be in the playoffs. If the fact that they're Vanderbilt is the reason that they're sitting outside.
Bingo. He knows it. Vanderbilt knows it. I know it. You know it. That's why. It's because, well, they're Vanderbilt. That's where we are. And that is not a true competition. Again, if the guy footing the bill was Floyd Reese, because one time I said, I think they're going to put the teams that people would rather see on TV into the playoff instead of the teams that belong. And he said, if they do that, then the whole thing is a sham and they should, and I'm like, okay, you can bitch about it, but I'm telling you that's what's going to happen. If he was the one footing the bill, and so he got to say whatever happens, whatever he wants goes, and he says put the 12 best teams in there and do not look at brand biased or eyeballs or anything like that, Vanderbilt would be in the playoff. But that's not how it works. I mean, Rick Neuheisel's telling you, Tennessee would get into the playoff with the exact same record, with the exact same schedule, with the exact same everything. There wouldn't even be a discussion for UT to get into the playoff. It's the equivalent of saying, let's put the Dallas Cowboys into the NFL playoffs. Because even though they have the same record as the Carolina Panthers, and Carolina, for whatever reason, has the tiebreaker, everybody watches the Dallas Cowboys and nobody watches the Carolina Panthers. So let's put the Dallas Cowboys in. And and I know, even though we'd rather watch the Cowboys in the playoffs, because a lot of us like the Cowboys, and so you'd like to see the Cowboys in there. And for those of us that don't like the Cowboys, we'd like to see the Cowboys because we love it when the Cowboys lose in the playoffs and they flash up to Jerry in the box. He's got his head in his hands and he's like, oh, God, I hate this. I can't believe it. Why is my team not winning? Oh, my God. We love it. It's a lot more interesting than Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. But that would be wrong. I know that would be wrong. We know what the rules are in the NFL. This, again, is a Notre Dame. And that's not how true competition works. But again, this is not a competition. This is a TV show. And I hope you all now understand the difference. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. Guy I grew up with, a guy I met at preschool, and our kids now go to preschool together. And we were talking about the committee and how they're going to rank Vandy and where everything should go and who should be in and who should be out. And I said, the worst part about this is Vanderbilt is going to get royally fucked by the College Football Playoff Committee. And there are going to be people who are not Vanderbilt fans that sit there and say, Vanderbilt got screwed. I think there are people who are probably fans of Big Ten teams who think Vanderbilt's getting screwed. I think there are probably people who are fans of ACC teams who thinks Vanderbilt's getting screwed. It is an injustice in theory. But we're all going to watch. I mean, I am heartbroken for Vanderbilt for the season that they've had. I am heartbroken for Clark Lea. I want to see Diego Pavia in the playoff. I think it's wrong. I'm not boycotting the playoff. I'll watch. You'll watch. And they know that. Again, I thought it was a total travesty 2 years ago when Alabama got put in over Florida State. Well, Florida State's quarterback got hurt, and that's the justification. Their quarterback got hurt, and they didn't win the Big Ten or the ACC championship game by enough. So Alabama got in. And I thought it was all about just the assumption that, well, Nick Saban's Alabama team must just be better because it's Nick Saban. And I say that because I knew this is a TV show. They wanted the TV product. Alabama Saban, Rose Bowl, New Year's Day, Harbaugh, Michigan. That's what they wanted. And that's what they got. So now I hope you see the difference. We're all just watching the TV show. And that's what they want. So that's the first thing. Vanderbilt got absolutely porked. Again, it's over. And they'll make their case. I expect College Game Day. And remember, College Game Day is officially controlled by the Southeastern Conference. They're going to be at the SEC championship game, even though 1 versus 2 is playing in the Big Ten game, which, of course, Fox is going to be at. And so College Game Day is controlled by the Southeastern Conference and in large part by Jimmy Sexton, because Nick Saban will go on there and say whatever he wants to help his buddies out. There will be, I think, a lot of defending of Vanderbilt on College Game Day on Saturday. It's not going to matter. There is no combination of wins or losses that, with games that can be played, that would make a difference. Alabama could win by 100. Which would make Vanderbilt's loss at Alabama more impressive? Doesn't matter. So that's the first thing. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I can tell you right now, Hiller Plumbing is not happy with the college football playoff ratings because they are proud supporters of the Vanderbilt Commodores, as well as the Nashville Predators and the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They've been in business since 1990. They are family-owned and operated with 100% satisfaction of happy you'll be or the service is free. If a customer is not pleased with the work performed, Hiller will make it right. Learn more at happyhiller.com. They are the best. They are professional. They are experienced. They are trustworthy. And their technicians come into your home and they leave it clean and better than they found it. Care is their core value, where they believe that when they care about others, everybody wins, which is why they take care of the customer on every job, every time. And I know this because I use Hiller in my home. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters, again, of the Vanderbilt Commodores, the National Predators, and the Tennessee Volunteers. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Here's the most disappointing part when it comes to Vanderbilt not making it to the college football playoff. This is what bothers me the most, because I think they are going to say in the end that, well, it still was a good season. Vanderbilt got to the Citrus Bowl. Vanderbilt's going to end the year postseason ranked number 9, number 11. It's the highest they've ever been. Diego Pavia might win the Heisman. If Fernando Mendoza beats Ohio State on Saturday, he probably wins it. But there is a shot that Diego Pavia wins the Heisman Trophy. And, hey, maybe that's a moral victory. This would not be the first moral victory that Vanderbilt has ever claimed. In fact, most of my entire life, Vanderbilt has claimed a moral victory over real ones. But this is what really bothers me about Vanderbilt getting fucked. I think Vanderbilt could win the national title. Most years, there's one or two teams that are head and shoulders, hands down, better than everybody else. But I'm not sure Ohio State is that team this year. Maybe they are. Maybe they run the gauntlet. Maybe they, do everything in their power in order to be able to win. I don't know. But I think Vanderbilt could win the national title this year. Again, Vanderbilt plays good teams and then dominates them, with the exception of on the road at Texas and on the road at Alabama. How did Georgia do against Alabama? Texas hung right in there with Ohio State, and that was with Arch not being able to complete a pass. Who can't Vanderbilt play with? Again, Georgia needed a miracle on 4th down in the 4th quarter in order to come back and beat the Vols, and then they needed overtime. They needed a miracle. They needed a missed easy chip shot. And the only reason that chip shot wasn't easier was because Tennessee had a false start on the field goal. And that's Georgia. They beat them by more than Oklahoma and Georgia beat Tennessee in Neyland Stadium by combined, and both teams are going into the field. I'm not saying I would pick Vanderbilt to beat Oregon. I wouldn't. Right now, there's probably nobody in the field that I would pick Vanderbilt to beat straight up, other than probably, the 2 qualifiers. Like if, some Scarbini State school gets in there, they beat them, the Boise States of the world. Who's that going to be? USF or whatever. They'd beat them. And then I think they would beat Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is one and done. I think Lane Kiffin has just nuked that whole thing. And I'm sorry. But outside of that, I think Vanderbilt would probably lose to any team. I would pick Notre Dame if they played Vanderbilt, even though I think Vanderbilt's got a better resume. But it would not surprise me if Vanderbilt beat them. Because Vanderbilt has played teams that we just assume LSU's better than them, and then Vandy goes in there and beats them. South Carolina was number 10 in the country. Lenora Sellers was the number 1 pick. And here we go. Vanderbilt beat them. Vanderbilt never beats UT. UT was favored by 3.5. Vanderbilt goes in there, beats them by 3 touchdowns. Vanderbilt has outperformed expectations all season long. I'm not saying they would win the national championship. I'm saying they could. And that's the part that bothers me. It would be one thing. Last year, Alabama got left out. There was a whole debate about Alabama versus SMU, and SMU got in, and Alabama last year was not winning the national championship. Jalen Milroe was not good enough. Kalen DeBoer was not good enough. It wasn't good enough. They were not going to win the national championship. This year's different. The other thing about Vanderbilt, and I think this is a big enough deal. Yesterday, Jared Curtis, the quarterback at Nashville Christian, made it official. He was a commit to Georgia, and on National Signing Day, he decided, anchor down, I'm going to Vanderbilt. So the number one quarterback in the 2026 class has decommitted from Georgia to commit to Vanderbilt. I saw today, and again, high school recruiting is not something that I keep up with. I've always kind of believed, hey, do high school recruiting on your own time, because when it comes to high school recruiting, especially today, these guys, they may show up, but they transfer every year. And so I don't even know if Jared Curtis is going to play a snap at Vanderbilt or not. But it is very symbolic that Vanderbilt flips the number one quarterback in the class from Georgia. Will Stein told me he recruited him at Oregon and said it was neck and neck with them in Georgia when it came to Jared Curtis. And he's like, dude, you need to try recruiting against Kirby Smart, because I do it, and Kirby Smart is relentless. And Vanderbilt beat him. There is a wide receiver, Owen Cabell. I have never heard of this guy before because, again, I don't do college football, high school recruiting. 6'3", 205 receiver, committed to Alabama in June. And today, 2 hours ago, Owen Cabell decided, screw Bama. I'm going to go play at Vanderbilt. Again, Vandy. This is not what college football used to be. I remember the day when USC and UCLA, I believe it was a Friday in June or July of 2022. I was in the Cayman Islands when it all happened. And I remember when UCLA and USC decided we're going to leave the Pac-12 and we're going to go to the Big Ten. And the TV media rights deal for the Big Ten went from what they considered to be, the Pac-12 went from what they thought was going to be $500 million to at best $280 million. And then Oregon and Washington followed suit, and that was the end. And I said on Sirius XM the next week, I said, college football as you know it, college football as I know it, it's over. What you used to think college football was, college football is not anymore. It's a different era. And the coaches have whined and complained about this for years. Now, what they do is, instead of criticizing their bosses, the chancellors and the TV networks and the commissioners, and instead of criticizing them for what they've done in college football, and instead of criticizing themselves for obeying to the almighty dollar, i.e. Lane Kiffin ditching his team before the playoffs for a couple extra bucks at LSU, they blame the players. Well, this NIL and transfer portal has ruined college football. I don't believe that to be the case. I think if you want to talk about ruining college football, it's about getting rid of the Rose Bowl, because the Pac-12 doesn't really exist anymore. It's about putting USC in the Big Ten. It's about ending rivalries that have mattered for decades. But make no mistake about it. What college football used to be is not what college football is today. And if you needed any proof of that, Vanderbilt, fully loaded with an NIL budget, is beating Georgia and Alabama for recruits. That would be like if Vanderbilt was beating North Carolina, Kentucky, and Kansas for basketball recruits. It would be like if a kid said, I grew up one day of playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars, not the Dallas Cowboys. It is a different era. And the playoff committee doesn't seem to understand this. They think, Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. They're going to be Vanderbilt. TV show, let's put Miami in. Vanderbilt just got the number one quarterback in the class. Vanderbilt just got a 4-star receiver to flip from Alabama. Could you imagine if on signing day, Nick Saban lost Dante Hightower to Vanderbilt? Because that's what happened. So I'm just going to tell you, if you think this is what college football used to be, then you do not know what is coming next. Because you're going to see more parity, and you're going to see more schools like Vandy, and you're going to see more of an arms race, and people are going to spend more money, and you're going to see schools that you never thought could compete, competing for national championships. Because in the end with football, just like everything else, for years the coaches were overpaid. Dabo Swinney was overpaid. Nick Saban was overpaid. Those guys were overpaid. The story goes that when Nick Saban got hired from the Miami Dolphins to Alabama, he and Mal Moore, the athletic director at the time, were on the plane. And they were taking off from Miami going to Tuscaloosa. And it was just those two men on the plane. And Nick Saban looked at Mal Moore and goes, Mal, do you think I'm the best coach in the country? And as the unauthorized biography of Nick Saban reports, Mal Moore thought to himself, for $4 million a year, you better be the best coach in the country. And he said, yes, coach, I do. I think you're the best coach in the country. And Nick Saban said, well, I'm not shit without my players. But you just hired the best recruiter in the country. It's always been about the players. As Nick Saban says, I've never coached a bad player to play well. I only coach good players to play better. With NIL, with the transfer portal, with the ability to play, with the Floyd used to tell me, the two currencies players understand. And I used to bring this up when we talk about the Brian Callahan Pee Wee program, because people were like, well, hey, this will teach them accountability. This will teach them. And I'm like, these guys are grown fucking men, millionaires. They don't care about a tug of war, 3 points for Gryffindor. Mark it down to Vondre Sweat. They don't care about that. Floyd used to tell me they care about two things: money and playing time. What are the two currencies that are given by NIL? Money, and the transfer portal, playing time. So this is going to happen more often. And hey, I'm here for it because I enjoy a Vanderbilt football team that is competitive. We'll get to your reaction here again on the program. And what I think is fascinating, again, about the unfortunate reality that the College Football Playoff Committee has zero interest in putting Vanderbilt in, is there a lot of people that are not Vanderbilt fans that think, I definitely think Vanderbilt belongs in. Brett goes, as a Bama fan, I would not want to play Vanderbilt again. I agree. I do not think that Vanderbilt lost to Alabama because Alabama is the better team. I think Vanderbilt lost to Alabama because Diego Pavia turned the ball over. Two separate plays. One was a dumb interception. One was, again, not to sound like Rand Carthon, but a bounce of the ball and a fumble. Was the wrist down? Was the hand down? Was the elbow down? That's the difference in the ball game. And they did that at Tuscaloosa. I would not want any part of Vanderbilt again if I was Alabama. War Kitten says, I get Texas beat them, but putting 9-3 Texas and Miami with their losses ahead of Vanderbilt is a crime. Again, I watched Miami lose to Louisville. And I thought, Miami's not very good. Well, yeah, they beat all these ACC teams. And okay. Did they beat SEC teams? Now, one thing about other conferences is they take it very personally. When you say things like, hey, it's 10-2 in the SEC. And they say things like, no, you just think the SEC is better than everybody else. SEC never loses SEC. I get it. I think the committee made a point, by the way, by putting Texas at 9-3. I don't think they think Texas is getting into the field. I think they put Texas ahead of Vanderbilt at 9-3 because they don't want to discourage teams like Texas from scheduling Ohio State. That's why I think they did it. Because Steve Sarkisian made a very good argument when Sark said after the game, hey, you want us to play Scarbini Tech and not play Ohio State? Fine. We're 10-2 and we're in the field. Because like Rick Neuheisel said, if you've got Vandy's resume and you're Texas Orange, you're in. One person says, Big Ten fan, and Vandy is definitely getting screwed. Double Win says, where's Greg Sankey advocating for Vanderbilt? I have not heard a peep from Greg Sankey. let me say this about Greg Sankey. I will be keeping an eye on College Game Day on Saturday. Now, I'll be on Sirius XM, so I'll have to keep an eye on it. I won't be listening to it. But I will be keeping an eye on what Greg Sankey does or says or what the panelists say. I agree. I think Greg Sankey needs to be out there pitching Vanderbilt for the field. Because if there's anybody who can threaten these politicians, which is what athletic directors are, if there's anybody who can threaten these guys, it's Greg Sankey, who has the option to essentially nuke the playoff if he wants to. And it's shit like this, Vanderbilt not getting into the playoff, that is going to want to make him do things that you're not going to like, I'm not going to like, and deep down inside, he's probably not going to like. Remember, Texas and Oklahoma are only in the SEC because the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 refused to expand the field from 4 teams. And I didn't want them to expand the field. And Greg Sankey said, fine, don't expand the field. I'm going to go ahead and ruin the Big 12. And he did. And so I would worry about keeping Vandy and Texas and these teams that are deserving. I would worry about that because, again, ACC, you like a seat at the table. Greg Sankey might take that away. Like, Greg Sankey may screw all you. And we can do college football without the teams in the ACC. And we can do college football without the teams in the Big 12. And quite frankly, outside of Michigan and Ohio State, we can do it without the teams in the Big 10. We cannot do college football without the SEC. We cannot do college football without Ohio State. We cannot do college football without Michigan. And we cannot do college football without Notre Dame. We can do college football without everybody else. Alex says, if Pavia wins the Heisman, no brainer. You want the team in the playoff. This doesn't make sense. I still don't think Pavia is going to win the Heisman, though. I don't even know who the favorite is to win the Heisman. Would it be Jeremiah Love? I think if Fernando Mendoza and Indiana beat Ohio State on Saturday, then Mendoza's the guy. But I also am not totally sure that they're going to do that and beat them. So make that about whatever you want. Too funny when it comes to people talking about, hey, when Vanderbilt plays a real team, they won't win. Yeah, if you're living in 1998, that's what it is. Kelsey gets it. It's all about eyeballs for the College Football Playoff Committee, which is driven by TV. It's a TV show. College football is a TV show. It is not a competition. Think about the NFL. The NFL is a competition. The league, and I know people joke about the script and everything like that. The league does not decide who wins. They don't get to pick the Super Bowl. If they got to pick the Super Bowl every year, it'd be the best quarterbacks, Mahomes and Josh Allen, versus the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas hasn't been to an NFC title game in 35 years. So it is not a television show. The NFL is a competition. There are rules. Nothing is subjectively decided in the NFL. College football is a TV show. We play all these games, very few of which have meaning, but we play all these games for things like pride. I watched the multi-view on YouTube TV, Louisville playing Kentucky, while watching Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan and Ohio State had some playoff juice to it, not a lot. Louisville and Kentucky had no playoff juice to it, but I watched it because that's my team against my team's rival, and I want to beat my team's. That's a TV show. That's a production. That's what the college football playoff is. It's about TV. War Kitten said, that said, it's a huge boost to the program, and I'm excited for the coming seasons, especially after the players who signed today for recruiting. You know, maybe 3 years from now, Vanderbilt will have won 2 titles with Clark Lea as the coach, and there won't be any looking back on this and saying it was a bad thing. Maybe we'll look back on it and say it was a good thing. I don't know about you. There have been a lot of times in my life where something that I have interpreted as a bad thing, in hindsight, actually was a good thing. But right now, it is really difficult for me to look at this Vanderbilt team that is the best Vanderbilt team that I have ever seen, that just went to Neyland Stadium and put their foot up the Tennessee Volunteers' rear end and be happy about it because they're not playing for a national title, when I think they can hang with most of the country. I think of the 12 teams that are in there, they can beat them. And that's disappointing. I want to talk about the Titans here for a second, if I may. Usually we talk a lot of Titans. Today, not so much. So, boy, yesterday, a lot of people got worked up with me because I said on the program that I believe the Tennessee Titans at the end of the year should clean house. I said it Monday. I think I said it Sunday on Post Game Live. I can't remember. I said it on Monday. I said it yesterday. And every time I say they need to clean house, there is some pushback about, Jared, you can't fire Mike Borgonzi. It's only been 1 year. To which I have already said, and I think successfully argued, that was it a good idea to give Rand Carthon 2 years? Because you all told me I couldn't fire Rand Carthon. You said, you can't fire Rand Carthon after 1 year. You're racist. No, he was incompetent. They decided to give Brian Callahan a second year because they didn't want to fire him after 1 year. How's that working out for you? So here's Mike Borgonzi. And I like Mike Borgonzi. And quite frankly, again, I don't have much of a relationship with him, but I think Mike Borgonzi likes me. Mike Borgonzi, in my opinion, would not be fired because Mike Borgonzi is not a good general manager. I don't know if Mike Borgonzi is a good general manager or not. Mike Borgonzi would be fired because whatever this collection that the Titans put together to try to improve the team from last year to this year has failed. This team is worse than they were last year. That's a fact. By every metric, DVOA, which again is an analytics stat I don't even understand. The offense is worse than they were last year. The defense is worse than they were last year. The points per game on offense is negligible, but technically worse than last year. And the defensive points allowed, worse than last year. By every possible stat, they are worse than they were a year ago. The quarterback that they drafted number 1 overall and turned away the trade with the Giants for is terrible by every metric as of right now. So when it comes to firing Mike Borgonzi, it's not that I'm sitting here saying, hey, Mike Borgonzi is a bad general manager. I am not saying that. I am saying that the power structure of the Titans, the football operation, and I include Burke Nihill in this because I think Burke's trying to kind of weasel his way from being CEO of the team and the organization and that to just, hey, I just handle the stadium. Don't look at me for football. Remember, Burke was taking credit for the hiring of Brian Callahan. So I think Burke likes his hand in there when he wants it to be in there, but now everything's bad, so he's taking his hand out. So I'm fine with them keeping Burke on as CEO, but you, at this point, you stay to the stadium and stay out of football. Brinker, gone. Borgonzi, gone. Coaching staff, gone. Start over. Hire a former general manager who's got good experience, a guy like Thomas Dimitrov, a guy like Rick Spielman, somebody like that, somebody that has demonstrated that they know how to build a football team. Put that guy in charge and let that guy pick the coach and let that guy and the coach decide on what they should do at quarterback and go from there. Let that guy and the coach decide what they should do with the number 1 pick. Go from there. That's it. So, when it comes to Mike Borgonzi, it's not like I have come to the conclusion that he is a bad general manager. I had come to the conclusion with Rand Carthon that he was a bad general manager. And I had come to the conclusion, and so had many of you, that Brian Callahan was a bad coach. I mean, for crying out loud, the guy didn't even know the rules, which he has paid millions of dollars to know. But the system that the Titans have in place, it is not working. You are worse this year than you were last year. They preached patience, and they knew there was going to be pain, but I don't think they thought they were going to be 1-11. And when it comes to Mike Borgonzi, I keep waiting for somebody. And again, I'm just saying they're worse than they were last year. They're not going in the right direction. I have no faith and anybody over there to get it done based off of the actual tangible results. And I got so many responses yesterday from people that said, Jared, you can't just keep firing the general manager every year. Well, again, what they've done every year, I didn't want to do. I didn't want to fire John Robinson in the middle of the season. I thought he deserved another season. I didn't want to promote Rand Carthon. I wanted to fire him. They promoted him. I didn't want Chad Brinker involved in picking the next general manager after last year. So everything that they've done, when you tell me you can't keep firing general managers every year, I keep saying, I'm not the one doing this. They are. Everything they've done, I wouldn't have done. I wouldn't have promoted Rand Carthon. He's incompetent. He didn't know what the general manager was supposed to do. Which again brings me back to Borgonzi. Mike Borgonzi's a nice guy. And I think Mike Borgonzi's a lot more competent than Brinker and Rand and those guys. Callahan. But I really haven't seen proof that Mike Borgonzi's a good general manager. And I have people that are telling me, oh my God, Jared, look at the draft class. The quarterback stinks. The pass rusher taken in the second round is injured and stunk. The safety's okay. I mean, he's got some promise. I think Chimere Dike has number 2 receiver potential, which if you get a number 2 receiver in the 4th round, that's pretty good. I think Gunnar Helm is a backup tight end, which again, 4th round, not bad. And I think Elikayo Manor is a 4th receiver who doesn't really play special teams. Think NWI, although NWI played much better on special teams. That is not the same as Jack Conklin, Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard. 1, 2, 3. Blake Bedingfield at paulkaharski.com wrote, the Titans are not only the worst team in the NFL this season, but rank as one of the worst teams in the last 5 years. The lack of talent, lack of coaching, and lack of competent decisions at the top of the organizational chart has made this a mess. Blake continues, the Titans were the worst team in 2024, but this team is far worse and less talented. So Mike Borgonzi was a part of a system in which the team, as Blake Bedingfield is saying, is far worse than they were last year. And yet, you are trying to tell me that none of that is Mike Borgonzi's fault? That Mike Borgonzi is a part of the solution and is none of the problem? That's all feeling. That's all. Well, I want to give Borgonzi another chance. Again, that's a feeling. Just like, well, let's give Rand another chance. Well, let's give Callahan another chance. That's a feeling where you feel obligated to give somebody more time that they haven't necessarily earned. That's a feeling, not a fact. The fact is, this team is worse by every metric than they were last year. The fact is, the quarterback that they used the number 1 overall pick on has a QBR of 31. It's a fact that Shedeur Sanders, that went in the 5th round, had a higher quarterback rating on Sunday in a loss to the San Francisco 49ers than Cam Ward has had in any individual game this season. Those are facts. It's a fact that Femi Oladejo doesn't sack the quarterback. It is a fact that Chad Brinker was the president of football operations when the Titans drafted J.C. Latham with the 7th overall pick. Those are facts. Everything else you're talking about, just your feelings. That's it. Let's get to some of your Titan reaction, because a lot of people do want to say this. Says, what if the new coach has half a brain and doesn't want to be tied to Cam Ward? The Cam boys need to realize that the guy might just stink. You know, I was talking to some people at the Predators game yesterday, and they were like, Jared, Cam sucks. And I'm like, thank you. I said this in the draft process. I'm like, I don't see the consistency. I think he's a project quarterback, and I don't think he's ready. And I think I'd sit him on the bench, and I don't. And I went to training camp, and I said, I thought I was looking at Blake Bortles, and oh, you're a hater. You do it for clicks. By the way, if I did what the fanboys do, and I just got on here every day and just blamed Mike McCoy and said Cam Ward was actually Superman in disguise, but Mike McCoy was holding him back, I think I'd get more clicks. And I'm dead serious about that. Juan says, I'm going to give Borgonzi another year, but Brinker can pack his bags and make sure he leaves no trash. Again, Borgonzi is a Brinker hire. So if you don't like Brinker, then you want to promote Brinker's hire. That is what you did with Ran Carthon, and that is what you did with Chad Brinker. So Ran Carthon became the general manager, proved right away that he didn't have a fucking clue as to what he was doing. Whether it was the draft night comments about be positive media or going into the year without a right tackle, he proved he didn't know what he was doing. He even doubles down on it on his podcast now, talking about wanting to trade back and then trade to get Jahmyr Gibbs when A, he clearly didn't have the board right because Gibbs went 12th and they picked 11th, and B, they didn't have a right tackle, a left tackle, or a wide receiver, and he wanted a second running back while he had the best running back on the planet on his team. But we got to give him a promotion because it's mean old Mike Vrabel's fault. Then they realized, no, Rand is as stupid as he led on to be, and drafts J.C. Latham with the 7th pick, and trades for L'Jarius Sneed, and signs Lloyd Cushenberry in free agency, and puts all his eggs in Will Levis's basket. He's got to go. So now who's in charge? Oh, the guy Ran hired. So now you want to fire the guy who Ran hired, and you want to promote the guy that you just wanted to fire. What? No, start over. That's what I've been begging for. Start over. This one guy says Jared just wants J-Rob back. No, I just want the Titans to start over. That's all I want. Oh my God, it drives me crazy. Unbelievable. Juan goes, now J-Rob's stupid. He needed a Football for Dummies book. Yeah, he was so incompetent that he never had a losing record. He was so bad that he had the same winning percentage that Bill Walsh had running the San Francisco 49ers. You know, I really hated going to those games at Nissan Stadium when the Titans were, in the playoffs. Yeah, I really hated those days. I really hated when they would win games in prime time against the Buffalo Bills and the LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And you can tell me that that was all because of the great Mike Vrabel, but they won a playoff game on the road at Kansas City against Andy Reid with Mike Mularkey as the coach. Vrabel didn't have anything to do with that. Oh, Jared, you don't. Yeah, again, feelings. These are your feelings. Your feelings say J-Rob sucks. But the truth is, the stats say J-Rob's pretty good. Now, I'm not advocating to bring John Robinson back because I think it's too toxic for the Titans to be able to do that. Amy could never. Her dad could. She couldn't. Amy could never pull the George Steinbrenner and treat John Robinson like Billy Martin. And the fan base, because, again, there's been so much anti-Robinson propaganda, since the day he got fired, that it's just like, oh, yeah, nah, he sucks. It's, oh, yeah, whatever. So that ship has sailed. But at the same time, when it comes to the J-Rob stuff, at the same time, when it comes to the general manager, I just want to start over. I just want to start over. That's it. I just want a new general manager who has previous general manager experience. And I want Amy to go to Houston and just mind her fucking business. And I want the son-in-law to go work on, hey, you're the guy that when we serve Thanksgiving dinner at the Mission, you're the one who sets that up. And I want Brinker and his consultant ass out of there. And I want people Brinker hired out of there. And I want the guy who put this all together, the CEO, go run the stadium. That's what I want. Unbelievable. All right, great show today. That's it for us here on the program. Stillman and Company, thank you all so much. Like and subscribe. I anticipate the numbers may be a little down because we talked a lot of Vandy today, but you know what? Vanderbilt deserves to be in, but they're not because it's a popularity contest. See you all tomorrow. Like and subscribe. Stillman and Company right here, 440.